Well, I'm pleased to announce that we've got Chilly here today to answer a number of the questions we've had in our Q&A competition. We've had a pretty big response on our Facebook, Twitter and of course on email, and I'm afraid we won't be able to answer all of the questions today, but what we've done is we've picked out a list of some of the best to ask Chilly today. So let's get it kicked off with the first question. Come from a guy called Adam Bolter from Oxfordshire. He's asked, I'd like to ask Ian what he thinks about anglers fishing for carp stocked at £20 plus. Are these types of stocking good for the sport, or are they just lining the pockets of the fishery owners?
I could answer that in a multitude of ways, but the first thing I would say, for me personally, it depends where those carp come from in the first place. I don't think there's any need to bring carp of that size into this country to stock our waters with. I think we're quite self-sufficient and we can look after ourselves now.
Yeah.
I'm guessing now the question itself relates more to the size of the fish than their origins. Yes, it's going to put money in a fishery owner's pocket. Yes, it will put money in the tackle manufacturer's pocket. But it also gives the chance for a guy who's working 9 till 5, 5 days a week, who's got a family of his own to watch out for, to go and catch fish of that stamp. It is a tough question, and I think carp fishing ultimately is about the enjoyment that it provides, and if those fish are stocked into a balanced fishery, not overstocked, not forced in there and shoehorned into the water where they've got nothing else to eat but anglers' baits. If it's a natural environment, then I don't think it can do the sport any harm whatsoever. I come from an era when I started fishing, I didn't even know carp were invented till I was about 16 years old, where a 20-pound carp would blow people's minds. So I still find that a very big fish, but I think it's great now that people can get the enjoyment from and catch fish of that calibre as long as they're in a good environment.
So it's basically broadened it for people coming into the sport wanting to catch these big fish, but they've got to come from the right places and they've got to go in the
Absolutely.
right
People
numbers.
are on limited time, we live in a busy world, and people have got very, very limited time to actually go fishing, and everybody wants to know what it's like to hold a big carp, and I actually agree with it, as long as the fish have come from the right source and they're stocked into the right kind of environment.
Well, I have to say I agree with you there, and that leads me on to the next question from Keith Grant from London. Do you think the price of carp tackle is too expensive for children?
I suppose the stock answer to that would be yes, for very, very young children, because they got no means of any kind of income. But all tackle manufacturers make budget range of tackle, and when people think of carp fishing rods, they're thinking of £300-400 a throw, and well, the best example of that would be the Warrior S, which is the most successful carp rod ever. And that retails at about £70. So in a decent shop with a little bit of discount, you're probably getting a set of those for 150 quid. Still sounds like a lot of money, but you do have to invest in it if you want to get the best out of the sport. I remember as a child I used to save up my paper round money, and I used to do various jobs all around the neighbourhood, and stealing people's trout as well, as I seem to remember, and selling them to people. But I did enough to buy tackle. Carp fishing is a lot more expensive than that now, and a lot of it's down to the parents. But whilst it is too expensive for an individual child to go and do, it's great that there are budget items that parents can buy for them. The last thing they want to do, even if they can, is to go out and buy expensive tackle when a child might give up after 6 months, a year. But yeah, there's tackle out there that's affordable as presents. Families get together, as mine used to do, and they used to all club together and buy me the things that I wanted. Then the kid can get what he needs. But it is expensive, but once you've got it and looking after it's the secret, you've probably got most of this gear for a lifetime.
No, exactly, and no doubt you've got to look after your equipment properly. In fact, this next question is from a younger angler, a boy called Mark Hassel, aged 12. He's asked you, why must you never leave your rods unattended, Ian?
Well, it's actually a very good question, and for a lot of experienced guys who may be seeing this, they'd wonder why it's asked. But we don't strike the hook home anymore. It's practically done for us with the setups that we use. And to wander off from your rod, a carp will cover a hell of a lot of distance in a very, very short space of time. And in the open water, that might not be too much of a problem. But if you're fishing in weed, around lilies, with any kind of snags, the first places that fish is going to go are into those obstacles in an effort to get rid of the hook. You should never leave your rods. The EA give a distance of only a couple of meters or whatever, and that's a little bit unrealistic in carp fishing. But as long as your bites can be registered on your bite alarms with the use of a remote, then the next swim on most fishers is acceptable, but always try and stay on your rods wherever possible. And if you have to go to the loo, you have to go to the shop or whatever, then make sure you reel them in. If you leave 3 rods with your friend who's got 3 rods out and the EA turn up, then he is going to get done for using 6 rods. So they need to bear that in mind. But ultimately, it's the safety of the fish. Yeah. As soon as you get an indication of a bite, you want to engage with the fish, play it into the net as safely as possible.
So that's that, Mark. Hopefully that gives you a good reason why you shouldn't leave your rods unattended. The next question comes from a guy called Robin. Why does nobody use foam hook baits for the bottom and only zigs? I would have thought it would make a good alternative, as you can have any shape and flavour and any size or colour of foam.
That's actually it is a very, very good question. There's one other thing, he mentions flavour there, and they do hold a flavour. I don't actually know why, is the honest answer, but I'll tell you there are better alternatives than a simple piece of foam, which is the plastic imitation baits that we use, corn, nuts, and all those maggots, etc. Yes, the foam will take on a flavour. Yes, it's very, very buoyant, but it's not as durable as plastic, and I think that is the problem with it. Foam is very, very light, and whilst it could be used, I don't think there's any point. You're better off using imitate. There are even plastic boilies now that you can use, and crayfish are becoming very, very widespread throughout the country, and they really are a huge problem. They'd make absolute mincemeat of a bit of foam in next to no time, and the plastic is that much more durable. Not a bad idea, improves the guy's thinking, and a lot of carp fishing is the use of your brain, not just mindlessly
thinking for yourself.
Not mindlessly going on and doing what everybody else is doing. And whilst he's thinking for himself, he's obviously got an open mind on it all, and it's something a lot of people don't do. They'll mindlessly follow fashions instead of following their own instincts. So he needs to keep doing just that.
No, exactly. And so we've discussed the whole fake hook bait or plastics, that sort of thing, but the next guy's actually talking about bait. Graham Sutcliffe asks, what is better, boilie or particles? He says, with the world and his wife using boilies because they're more convenient, I think it's particles. But Chilly, what do you think?
I'd have to slightly disagree with him there. Boilies are actually quite an expensive bait, and most people, certainly when they want to put a lot of bait in, aren't going to choose boilies to do that with. They'll use particles. And I'd have to disagree with him yet again, because I think boilies are a infinitely better bait than particles. And I've used both, and I've used both a lot, and I'm not talking out of turn here. I do have the experience of using them. Particles tend to concentrate carp into small areas, and I will always maintain that a carp that has to move between mouthfuls is infinitely more catchable than one that is just grubbing around in the same place.
Because it's going to move and pull against the lead.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's picking up one grain of hemp at a time, a little bit of mouthful, and he's not moving around. And when I use boilies, I use different sizes, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But boilies, I can spread them out a little bit. I can encourage him to move fair old distance between each mouthful, and he is so much more catchable. And a lot of people think a boilie is just a round ball of bait, and it's nothing of the sort. It's a very, very versatile bait. Different sizes. I'm not suggesting a carp has the intelligence to know what an 18mm boilie is, what a 15mm boilie is, what a 12mm boilie is, but the bigger baits are easy for them to pick up. They're the ones I normally pre-bait with because they can find them quite easy. I don't want to make it difficult for them to find the bait at that stage. In a fishing situation, I'm using 14, 15mm baits and 10mm baits in combination. One, it just jazzes up the baited area a little bit, and two, it gives me options for hook baits. I can take that further. I can crush up those 14mm or the bigger 18mm boilies and get some quarters and half baits in there. Again, you've made it slightly different, and take it to the ultimate level. You can crush them up and use just boilie crumb in there in a spod mix. They're not just a round ball that are easy to fire out, and yeah, I think boilies are much better than particles, and I guess I always will. You know, all my big fish have been caught on boilies, and
but it's that fact that you don't just have to use them as boilies.
You're limited by the extent of your imagination, really. You can turn a boilie into a particle bait if you want, as I said, by crushing them up.
Yeah.
And it just works for me.
Brilliant.